7th Annual Columbia Values Diversity Celebration. I am Monica Naylor, and I will represent the Event Planning Committee today as the Mistress of Ceremonies. We would like to thank the musicians from MU School of Music for the wonderful music during our breakfast. Let's give them a hand. Please stand while the Columbia Fire Department Honor Guard presents the colors and we enjoy the singing of our national anthem by Simone Sparks.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we've hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
Please remain standing for the honor guard to leave and for an invocation written by Kurt Saxton, a member of the Baha'i faith.
O my God, verily I invoke thee and supplicate before thy threshold, asking thee that all thy mercies may descend upon these souls, specialize them for thy favor and thy truth. O Lord, unite and bind together the hearts, and join in accord all the souls, and exhilarate the spirits through the signs of thy sanctity and oneness. O Lord, make these faces radiant through the light of thy oneness. Strengthen the loins of thy servants in the service of thy kingdom. O Lord, thou possessor of infinite mercy, O Lord of forgiveness and pardon, forgive our sins, pardon our shortcomings, and cause us to turn to the kingdom of thy clemency, invoking the kingdom of might and power, humble at thy shrine and submissive before the glory of thine evidences. O Lord God, make us as waves of the sea, as flowers of the garden, united, agreed through the bounties of thy love. O Lord, dilate the breasts through the signs of thy oneness, and make all mankind as stars shining from the same height of glory, as perfect fruits growing upon thy tree of life. Verily, thou art the Almighty, the self-subsistent, the giver, the forgiving, the pardoner, the omniscient, the one creator.
On the stage, you can see the mural banner created by teen artists from Columbia Parks and Recreation's CARE program. This artwork serves as the backdrop for today's celebration, representing our theme, Our Dream, the Journey Continues. Read more about the artwork in your program. You will also find a calendar of community events that commemorate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The back of your program lists the many financial sponsors of the diversity celebration. Without their financial support, our event would not be possible. Also listed in the program are the many people involved in the planning and coordination of this event. This includes the members of the planning committee, which represent the diversity of our community, as well as staff from the City of Columbia. The committee would like to give special thanks to city staff members Elise Buckheit and Christina Wolf for their tireless commitment to the success of this event. On your table, you will find information about the kindness wristbands provided by Children's Grove. You will also find a compilation of writing by students in 4th through 12th grades from schools throughout Columbia. McDonald's Restaurants of Columbia has again generously sponsored the Student Writings Program. To highlight the young voices of Columbia, we would like to present a video produced by Columbia's City Channel featuring 3 students whose writings are in the booklet.
Change in Columbia. I came to Columbia in 2008, lived there for a year, and then moved to Rolla, Missouri for a decade before coming back this summer. I came with fresh eyes and memories of Columbia from a decade ago. From that time to now, I've seen a lot of positive changes and the community has become more diverse. I have classmates from all over the world: Greece, Brazil, Pakistan, China, Egypt, South Korea, and many more. I myself came from Libya. It's amazing to see people from different backgrounds and cultures come together in one school, speaking the same language and learning the same curriculum. My dad and I went to the mosque, and I saw the playground that I used to play on had changed. People have come and gone. However, there are a lot more people now. There isn't enough parking space anymore. The Muslim community is growing. People from all over the world are a part of that community. We took a walk to the walking trail near the mosque, and during that walk, I noticed the diversity and positive change in the community. There's a bridge with positive messages about unity and community on the walls of the tunnel under the bridge. We kept walking and found a memorial dedicated to James T. Scott, a black janitor who was lynched by a mob at Stewart Road Bridge. It shows how far we've come fighting against oppression and injustice. On our way back on the trail, we saw a Chinese couple walking in the opposite direction. There's more diversity now than ever before. Columbia celebrates diversity of people from different nations, cultures, religions, and races. Let us celebrate and continue to improve upon the community.
We are diversity. We are all born the same. The only difference is the way we look and our name. From different places just like you, from different families and genders too. Different sizes, colors, and wages being earned. A variety of new religions and languages being learned. I'm really glad it worked out this way, because if it didn't, the world wouldn't be as colorful today. Now think about this poem and what diversity means, you see. Because if we were all the same, you wouldn't be you and I wouldn't be me.
My dream/vision for Columbia. I have lived in Columbia for a long time. I've seen different faces and different personalities is what I know and all I come by. But no matter what backgrounds we come from, we're still a community and the journey continues. I read the book Wonder by R.J. Palacio, and it showed me how people can be judged just by one different feature, but not by their traits. And it taught me that not everybody in this world will be kind. I feel in Columbia that we need to be kinder in our communities, schools, and within our families. Also in the book, it talked about how much time is wasted on not being kind. All it takes is a simple hello. That doesn't mean you can't choose kindness, because I once heard somebody say, do things for people, not because of who they are or what they do in return, but because of who you are. So my dream/vision for Columbia will be to grow in peace, confidence, and decrease in hate. After that, then do something to better this world, even yourself.
One of the reasons why Columbia is often recognized as one of the nation's best cities is because we have leadership that recognizes and promotes diversity and inclusion. For this, the presentation of the 23rd Annual Columbia Values Diversity Awards, we are honored to have our mayor, Brian Treese.
Well, thank you, and good morning. Welcome to the annual Columbia Values Diversity Breakfast. It is my honor to serve as your mayor, and I especially want to thank Monica Naylor for her host as mistress of ceremonies for this breakfast year after year. Mayors may come and go, but Monica Naylor endures. And we are grateful for your warm welcome to us at this breakfast every year and your steady stewardship throughout the next 12 months. Each year, the City of Columbia gives both an individual award and a group award to persons and organizations whose work in our community exemplifies the life and the teachings of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This year's nominees are listed in your program, along with previous award winners. A panel of judges selected by the Planning Committee is charged with choosing the Columbia Values Diversity Award winners. And our judges this year were Cecily DeVise, Verna LeBoy, Clyde Ruffin, and Phil Peters. Their decisions are based on the criteria of promoting an appreciation of diversity and cultural understanding in our community. Community work which exemplifies the teachings of Dr. King in fostering individual dignity, racial equality, understanding, peacemaking, and solving problems through nonviolence. And lastly, engagement in this activity for an extended period of time with significant activity in the City of Columbia in the preceding year. Columbia has so many people who work for equal opportunity for all, so choosing among so many deserving individuals each year is a difficult task. Helping me with this difficult task, I, with great pleasure, present the 2020 Columbia Values Diversity Awards, beginning with the individual award. Would Nikki McGruder please come forward, please? Nikki McGruder is an individual who has made a significant impact in promoting appreciation for diversity and cultural understanding. Her work and perseverance towards building an inclusive community reflects the life and teachings of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Since May of 2018, Nikki has served as director of the Inclusive Impact Institute, an organization dedicated to strategically creating diverse and inclusive communities through multidimensional collaboration, education, and engagement. Prior to the creation of this new community endeavor, Nikki served for more than 3 years as regional manager of the Columbia branch of the Diversity Awareness Partnership. It was the first branch to be created outside the St. Louis community. And over the course of the organization's 17 years, Nikki and her team have worked tirelessly, and I know because I have interacted with her time and time again with Columbia's businesses and organizations and individuals as they do their work. Under Nikki's leadership in diversity and inclusion in Columbia, more than 15,000 community members have been reached, in addition to those very businesses and organizations, through events and trainings and community dialogues, tough community dialogues. In January of 2018, Nikki, in partnership with several key businesses and community leaders in Boone County, launched the Journey Toward Inclusive Excellence. For those of you that joined us last year and the year before at this breakfast, you joined us on that journey, and that journey continues today. This program helps everyone in the community develop self-awareness of our own biases and the roles they play both personally and professionally, while we learn how to create a community where all feel valued and can thrive by recognizing the privilege and oppression and their impact on our community and commit to impacting the very systems which oppress others. Nikki's selfless service in the community exemplifies the teachings of Dr. Martin Luther King. Please join me in thanking and recognizing Nikki McGruder. And now for our group award. Would representatives of City of Refuge please come forward? In 2010, Lori and Barry Stahl founded City of Refuge with the mission to help refugees recover and regain control of their lives by welcoming refugees to Columbia and helping them assimilate to become important members of our community. Since its founding, the organization has grown to include 5 staff members and a large number of volunteers, and I know they are always looking for more volunteers. I think we all know what it's like to move to a new home, in a new city, with new neighbors. And now imagine yourself in a different country with different customs and a different language. And you can see how important the work of City of Refuge is. So when I talk about how proud I am of Columbia being a welcoming city, it is because of organizations like City of Refuge. My wife Mary and I have watched your organization grow by offering others a hand up in the most vulnerable of our community. Refugees add diversity and energy to our community and our economy is stronger because you are here. Thanks to the great work of City of Refuge, refugees have access to a warm welcome in our community through trauma counseling and life skills like shopping and banking and housing and transportation. Dr. Martin Luther King gave his life to the service of others. City of Refuge is built on the very premise that serving others is the highest calling. Its staff and volunteers help refugees become integrated into our larger Columbia community, foster cross-cultural understanding, and establish long-lasting friendships and attain the dream they had in coming to this country. Lori and Barry meet the commandment to love thy neighbor. Please join me in recognizing City of Refuge.
I'm Carrie Utterback, and I had the honor of winning the individual award last year. And I don't do any of my work alone. I get to work alongside fabulous people like Nikki. And so when I won the award, I felt like I wanted to share it with all of you that I get to do this work with. So none of that is what I'm supposed to be saying. So Inclusive Excellence Boone County was launched at this very breakfast in 2018, and we have been on a journey toward inclusive excellence ever since. We are so happy to launch our third year of the journey today, so be sure to register for your passports on the way out. I think we'll be in the back right this way. The journey is only one leg of Inclusive Excellence Boone County. So today we would like to highlight the other leg of the initiative, the Inclusive Excellence for Business. Please enjoy this video.
We're proud of these businesses that have made this commitment to inclusive excellence. They committed to going through 8 months with us of training. So we met once per month to walk through not only each of the 5 dimensions of the framework, but also the understanding and commitment to the principles of community. So what you will see is the first cohort.
This past year when we made grants under financial stability, we looked at the unemployment rate. We saw individuals with disabilities, African American young men were part of that group, and they were left out of some of the key opportunities to advance and to have economic mobility. So by using that equity lens, Heart of Missouri United Way was able to then support grants that directly provided services and support to those of our neighbors who have been left out.
And the most specific and most visible thing I can talk about is probably Prosper U that we have put together. We've incorporated that from the framework. We've spent the last couple years thinking a lot about that and got that started in the summer this year. As far as Prosper U, it's an opportunity for free programming, education, one-on-one counseling and coursework, helping people understand and learn and grow in areas of personal development, in financial education, and in small business growth and opportunities.
We are trainers and coaches, and we know that that matters. And I did a strategic planning recently, and there was someone who was visually impaired. So making sure that he couldn't see the PowerPoint, but making sure that he had the materials accessible to him and in a format where he could see them. So being more mindful of that on the front end than we had been in the past, using a checklist, all of that. So taking it to a higher degree, I would say, is what we've done, more intentionality.
I think the biggest thing is, since going through that program, we have brought on a professional development coordinator within our organization. We are about 80 people strong at Influence & Co., so we are not a terribly large organization. So to have someone dedicated to professional development and training and growth for our employees felt really important. And she and I are going to be working together to sort of implement diversity and inclusion efforts across the board.
The framework was actually excellent way to make sure that a company, number one, is intentional, number two, goes out of their way to try and make opportunities happen for minorities, and then stay on it, that it's not something you do once and figure I just checked off the box, but it's something that's part of your organization every single day. We have people that are hired to make sure that we're doing it. We have small groups that talk about it all the time. It's part of life here. It's been wonderful.
I think what the principles really are for us is a lens that we should use to think about everything we do and every decision we make, with that at the back of our minds always, that the principles of community are there, and it's what we're trying to strive for in every policy and decision that we make.
They're principles that we as an organization, the people that are in our leadership roles as an organization, whether they're volunteered or paid staff, they're principles that we can all work and strive to move towards and to be better.
Making that public commitment that we're going to stay focused in our hiring practices, that we're going to stay focused on the vendor relationships that we commit to, that we're going to stay focused on our business opportunities as we look out, stay focused on the selling of our product, our hiring of our employees, but that we're going to do it with an eye towards bringing a more diverse and inclusive clientele into shelter. And I think we all win when that happens.
I have to say that the experience of walking through the Inclusive Excellence for Business with the first cohort was amazing. I know I learned a lot from them as they worked through each of the dimensions and what it meant for them to understand and apply the principles of community to their work life and their work environment. We had another cohort go through in 2019, and we look forward to you all joining us in 2020.
We are a community of diverse individuals possessing a variety of perspectives, identities, and lived experiences.
We recognize that to create an inclusive and intellectually vibrant community, we must understand and value both our individual differences and collective similarities.
The principles of community are aspirational statements that embody this commitment and reflect the ideals we seek to uphold.
We affirm the inherent dignity and value of every person and strive to maintain a climate for work and learning based on mutual respect and understanding.
We affirm the right of each person to express thoughts openly, freely. We encourage open expression within a climate of civility, sensitivity, and mutual respect.
We affirm the value of human diversity because it enriches our lives and our organizations. We acknowledge and respect our differences while affirming our common humanity.
We reject all forms of prejudice and discrimination, including those based on age, color, diverse ability, gender identity, gender expression, national origin, political affiliation, race, religion, sexual orientation, and veteran status.
We take individual and collective responsibility for helping to eliminate bias and discrimination, and for increasing our own understanding of these issues through education, training, and interaction with others.
We pledge our collective commitment to incorporate these principles into our organization's mission and strategic plan.
Good morning. So my name is Nikki McGruder. I am blessed to serve our community as director of the Inclusive Impact Institute, an organization committed to the creation and sustainability of inclusive communities. The Institute is honored to lead the collaborative effort known as Inclusive Excellence Boone County. What you just heard from this group of amazing people behind me, amazing humans behind me, were the principles of community. And we applaud the organizations who have made a commitment to those principles. For the last 2 years, Inclusive Impact Institute and our partner in the Inclusive Excellence for Business, the University of Missouri Division of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity, met each month, as you heard, for 8 months, with business leaders to walk them through not only the understanding of the principles of community, but each of the 5 dimensions of the Inclusive Excellence Framework. It was important that these leaders know that the principles and the dimensions were going to require a level of commitment and vulnerability as we worked hard to build inclusive work environments. In making that commitment, we also agreed to lean on each other for tips and guidance, but also to hold each other accountable. 2020 marks our 3rd year of this initiative, and we invite you to join us. Behind me, you see the team of professionals from businesses all across Boone County that are committed to working together to create experiences that challenge each and every human to confront our biases and do the internal work needed for a community where every human feels valued and knows that they belong. These are your journey toward inclusive excellence, committee members. Can we give them a round of applause? Now, as we gather here today to honor the Dr. Martin Luther King, and we still strive toward his vision of the beloved community, I'd like to challenge you in the words of the late and great novelist, playwright, and activist James Baldwin. We can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist. The journey invites every human in our community to look closely at where our disagreements stem from and work closely with other humans to mitigate our biases. We introduced the journey to you from this very stage in 2018, and we're pleased to bring it into this new decade. Please see us in the back after the ceremony this morning to sign up and receive your new passports, the 2020 version. It's getting better and better each year. We've chocked it full of experiences that every human in this place can see themselves being a part of. If you look through anything and say, well, I don't have anything to work on, I challenge you to look a little closer. We all have work to do. So our team will be in the back after the breakfast to sign you up for your new passports. And you can also, business leaders, you can also get information about how you can be a part of the 3rd cohort of Inclusive Excellence for Business. We still have a lot of work to do. We celebrate our successes and we've made a lot, but we still have a lot of work to do. And I would suggest that we could even do better. Let's do better together. The journey continues. Thank you.
Thank you. Now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Malik Ahmed. For more than 40 years, Malik Ahmed has spearheaded impactful community development initiatives around the United States and in Africa. He is the founder and chief executive officer of Better Family Life, a nonprofit community development corporation in St. Louis, Missouri, that tackles social and economic problems in the community from a holistic approach. Under his leadership, Better Family Life established 5 core pillars of development: community outreach, cultural arts, housing and asset development, workforce development, and youth, family, and clinical services. They reach more than 50,000 people annually. Ahmed holds a bachelor's degree in economics from the Herbert H. Lehman College in New York, a master's degree in policy analysis from Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville, and a certificate of completion from the Harvard Kennedy School's NeighborWorks Achieving Excellence Executive Leadership Program. Please join our speaker for a signing of his recently published book, From the Projects to the Pyramids, in the back of the Expo Center following the conclusion of the event. Books will be available for purchase. It is our pleasure to welcome to our celebration Malik Ahmed.
Good morning. I can't hear you. Good morning. Good morning. Is everybody in the back all right? A large audience. First of all, I'd like to thank Ms. Alicia Buckheim and the City of Columbia for inviting me to be the keynote speaker today. To Mayor Brian Treese, to the lovely lady, Madam Monica Naylor, to all of the distinguished representatives here from corporations, from universities, from public schools, from the community at large. I am happy to be in Columbia this morning to celebrate with you one of the greatest minds and men to walk the earth, Dr. Martin Luther King. I am also pleased to know that you have been doing this for 27 years, committing to the dream of Martin Luther King is no small task, because contrary to most people's imagination, it was not just a dream, it was an action reality that Dr. King engaged in for all of the years that he was living. And so when you commit to Martin Luther King, you're committing more to a dream, you're committing to a reality. Over the past 37 years, I, along with a small group of individuals, started Better Family Life. And as Madam MC Monica Naylor pointed out, that these initiatives not only was in St. Louis, Missouri, but on the East Coast, as well as in West Africa. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the 1970s, in the West African country of Mali, where I served for 3 years in some of the most harshest conditions. And I am so grateful to have had that opportunity. And those were the formative ideas that helped me understand why a better family life was needed. When we say better family life, we're actually only saying that I love you. So please, can each of you turn to your neighbor, look them straight in the eyes, and talk to their heart and say, I love you. And when you say I love you, you are saying better family life. The focus of my address today asks the question that Dr. Martin Luther King asked in his 1967 address to the Southern Leadership Conference, his last address to that mighty body. And that question was, where do we go from here? That's a very powerful question. Today, we must be honest and view with a sober mind the general nature of what's taking place in metropolitan communities all across the country. We must expand our view to include the plight of Black America. On one hand, African Americans have made remarkable progress over the last 50 years. Undeniably, there are more African Americans being elected to public office. There are more college graduates. Today, we can identify a significant Black middle class. Home ownership has increased, and with a few exceptions, African Americans can live any place they want if they have the money. We have athletes and entertainers making mega bucks. And we also have a few Black millionaires, and now we even have some billionaires. That's the positive side, right? On the other hand, there's a much darker side that tends to be played down or taken as a fact of American life that has to be changed if we're going to keep consistent with the dream and the reality of the fight that Dr. King fought for and died for. The plight of nearly 65% of African Americans, or nearly 23 million, consisting mostly of the working families and the working poor, have been virtually unchanged. Many, including myself, believe that the plight of the African American community has actually worsened over the last 50 years, and that the country has embraced a more sinister, uncaring, institutionalized, racist posture that will continue in the future if people of conscience, those in this audience, will remain on the sideline. Many people who view themselves as progressive voted for Donald Trump. Many of them joined him on the platform of Make America Great Again. But I asked the question, when has America been great for Black Americans? When has America been great for the Black masses, for poor people, for Native Americans, for Hispanics? Is he making America great or pulling America further apart? Mr. Trump is clear about the hate and lethal bigotry he generates against people of color. He has cut back federal funds for public housing. He has neglected urban communities. He has neglected the plight of the poor. He has made drastic cutbacks on food stamps with the full awareness that these cutbacks will increase the health crisis of poor people and working class families. There have been major cutbacks in public education, and over the past 3 years, he even tried to eliminate Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. Does someone in this audience hear me this morning? On the other hand, he has praised the efforts of police to gun down innocent black and brown people. When he talks about the illegal immigrants who he says are smuggling drugs into the country and have caused a spike in crime, he states that his targets are the Mexican drug cartel and the notorious M13 gang. But it seems like in reality, it is brown people from Latin America. Well, in the next breath, he speaks of the out-of-control crime in the streets of St. Louis, Chicago, and East St. Louis, Illinois, and in his own words, in the rat-infested city of Baltimore. Do y'all all know that all of these places he is talking about have large populations that are black and brown people? These are just some of the dog whistles he uses to mobilize his base. This kind of racist rhetoric fuels the continuation of a toxic environment that targets its victims. In other words, black and brown people and poor people have always been in the crosshairs of these vicious attacks. We have been the scapegoat of racist propaganda and violence. As horrible as these overt acts of racist propaganda are, they are only the tip of a multi-layer problem confronting all of us. We have seen many internal as well as external problems that holds many of us back. In the African American community, we see a growing health crisis. The African American rate of developing asthma and cancer and contracting HIV and AIDS, suffering from heart disease, kidney disorders, strokes, is nearly twice that of other ethnic groups. We are more likely than other ethnic groups to suffer from obesity, arthritis, depression, heart disease, and liver disorders. And our rate of suicide has drastically increased over the last 30 years. On the educational front, we are all aware that our public school system is failing a disproportionate number of African American youth. This failure is creating a vital pipeline for the prison industrial complex, the Wall Street finance prison complex, where young children are now slated for prison as early as the 2nd and the 3rd grade. If Martin Luther King was here today, he will say this has to change and it has to be cut off. The graduation rate of African Americans entering the 9th grade is only about 50%. Most urban city public schools, where 80% of the students are African Americans, lack the latest technological advances and lack the specific educational remediation methodologies and technologies than their counterpart schools in the affluent suburbs. Most school curriculums lack the cultural competency and social sensibility to help motivate, educate young African American children. A few public charter schools are able to cherry pick the most desirable students, leaving the rest in unproductive schools, thus again helping to fuel the school to prison pipeline. In 2018, black male students made up only 8.6% of the national public school enrollment, yet they constituted 21% of those classified as mentally retarded, mentally ill, needing all kinds of psychedelic drugs to keep them in a tame state. And this has also helped to fuel a drug epidemic in young African Americans, starting as early as 5 and 6 years old. 15% are placed in special education. 12% have learning disabilities. The economic front, reflects this same dismal picture. African Americans generate $1.3 trillion into the gross national product of this economy, and yet 2% of that is invested in African American owned businesses. And thus, African American communities suffer. Assets is something that most African Americans don't have. And they don't have it because they are not taught financial literacy. They are not taught how to open up savings account. That is not a part of any curriculum in any of the schools. 25% of African Americans all over the country are classified as unbanked. They are the victims of pawn shops, payday loan companies, and other unscrupulous and nefarious financial predators who prey on the poor and the uninformed. Today, over 800,000 African Americans rot away in America's penal institutions. The majority of these inmates were convicted of non-violent drug-related crimes. Y'all remember that, right? That those people that are in the penal institutions were there, most of them, because they had marijuana on them. And now marijuana is legal across the country, but they're still rotting in jails today. Something has to be done about that. Would you agree with me? Most of these inmates come from poor neighborhoods, were taught in substandard schools, are from dysfunctional families, are victims of chronic unemployment, and have severe health issues. For many, incarceration is a revolving door. A large percentage will be perpetually attached to the criminal justice system, crippled and perpetually attached to an inhumane lifestyle. For most of them, rehabilitation is nearly hopeless. Their rate of recidivism is sky high. Those who enter the prison industrial complex usually go in, come out, go in, come out, go in, and come out. And they stay there. And their next generation, the same thing happens to them. Consequently, their plight is lost on the conscience of most decent Americans. In recent years, the incarceration rate has increased among black females, most of whom are poor, have not completed high school, are welfare recipients, and have on average 1 to 2 children. If Dr. King was here today, he would point that out as an insane situation in the most prosperous nation in the world. And most disturbing of all, homicide is the leading cause of death among young black males between the ages of 15 and 44. The destructive firepower used in this alarming rate of homicide is the weaponry found on war fronts. Yet they have made their way into urban communities. These senseless killings make it impossible for all who live in urban inner city neighborhoods to enjoy a quality life. Over 40% of African Americans in this age range are involved in the criminal justice system. And if current trends continue, nearly 75% in this age range would be involved in the criminal justice system. Now, in highlighting these grim statistics, some in the audience may think by pointing these things out that it is the view of a pessimist. Not at all. Our situation is not hopeless. These are human-made problems that human beings can correct. Is that right or is that wrong? In our dream of a new world, that journey continues. I believe all of us must ask the same question today as Dr. Martin Luther King asked over 50 years ago. Where do we go from here? I say first, we need to express our collective outrage at both the external and internal conditions that confront the African American community. We must be dissatisfied that African Americans, working families, and the poor are virtually ignored by our society. Dissatisfied that a large percentage of the wealth in this country is still possessed by 1% of the nation population. Dissatisfied by the growing conservatism and racism of well-meaning moderates who are quick to compromise their social conscience, morality, and principles to join, in the words of Martin Luther King, to join the reactionary forces in order to flow down the comfort stream of the status quo. Dissatisfied because major banks and insurance companies and large retail service-oriented establishments are still reluctant to set up facilities and retail outlets in African American communities. Dissatisfied to know that racial profiling of African Americans by the police and shopping mall security guards isn't considered an outrageous affront to our humanity. Dissatisfied that unarmed African Americans are still being murdered by undisciplined, poorly trained, and trigger-happy police officers. Dissatisfied that major urban communities have not approved the request of civilian review boards to have subpoena power. Dissatisfied that many well-established leaders in the African American community refuse to open their eyes and stand up, speak out, and mobilize against the forces of racial injustice. Dissatisfied that the Democratic and progressive parties have not launched major, massive voter education, registration, and participation campaigns in African American communities. Dissatisfied that nearly $2 trillion have been used to help Iraq and Afghanistan to rebuild their economies, yet inner city neighborhoods throughout America have received no economic support, no plan for future investment, and only specious promises of financial assistance from Washington, D.C. We must stay not only dissatisfied, but reinforce it with sustainable and measurable action. We must be the change agents that we seek. We must organize, organize, and organize. Everyone in this audience should find some charitable organization that you can join and work with and volunteer. You may ask, how do we do this? First, you must believe that you can make a difference, that you have the capability to learn the issues confronting communities and people. You must believe we have the ability to stay together in spite of our diversity and our differences. Is that right or wrong? Secondly, we must be willing to promote a new vision of society by providing guidance to a community and a people who have been wandering in the wilderness. Third, we must work on issues that we can find early wins. Don't take on big, gigantic issues, take on little small issues. Because once you get the cycle of winning in your mind, you can do greater things. So you gotta take on things that you can come together on, things that are broad enough that everybody agrees with. Finally, we must restore hope by believing in our people's ability to overcome all impediments that block our path to enjoying a fuller and more complete life. We must believe that God has a divine purpose for each and every one of us. Our 400-year journey in America of the African American is divine. And it's divine in the sense that it fits the description in the Bible when Abraham is talking to his seeds, or talking about the seeds of Abraham. God is telling Abraham that his seed is going to be a stranger in a foreign land and will serve for 400 years. Last year was the 400 years since the landing of the first African Americans in Jamestown, Virginia. So now you see a renaissance in African Americans, a desire to know more about their culture, more about their history, more about the land that they came from. We are finding that this renaissance is helping a new explosion in African American cultural understanding. Home ownership is exploding. Black people are moving into higher offices. Black people are on the move again. But that movement will be stifled if people of conscience, people of diversity don't get behind these good movements. In 1983, as I conclude, I established Better Family Life in St. Louis, Missouri. Better Family Life started in the basement of my and my wife's home with just a few volunteers. And we stayed together, we worked together, and we moved our conscience in coordination with the reality that we saw on the ground. North St. Louis, some of y'all know, have been in a state of depression for over the last 50 to 60 years. But we understood that if we are going to be committed to the dream and the work that Martin Luther King committed to, we had to stay involved regardless of how difficult, how formidable that task was. And now, 37 years later, as was pointed out in my introduction, Better Family Life employs over 150 full-time employees with a budget of over $10 million, serving 50,000 people annually on the front of dealing with the crime issue that's raging out of control, working to rebuild houses, working to restore hope, putting people, we have the largest workforce program in the state of Missouri, putting thousands of people to work, back to work, to full-time jobs, showing them that we can take them from one state of consciousness to another state of consciousness, to another state of consciousness where they become homeowners, where they become responsible for their families, where they get engaged in the schools, where they have a profound understanding and love for themselves. We do all of this in the spirit of love. And finally, as was said, I am the author of a book. And the theme of this breakfast, that journey continues. I talk about a journey that took me from the housing projects in Harlem, New York, all over the world, and learning bits and pieces of what family life is about. Because I understand that if you can get families together, you can get a community together. If you can get a community together, you can get a city together. If you can get a city together, and it looks like Columbia is on that path of being a diverse 21st century city, you can get the state together. If you can get the state together, you can get the nation together. If you can get the nation together, you can get the entire world together. That is the charge of Martin Luther King. That is what we must commit ourselves to. So thank you very much. Please get the book. Tell people about the book, because it is a journey that you want to go on with me. Thank you again.
Our celebration, may I present our artistic program directed by Dr. Gail Humphreys Martirosian, Dean of Stevens College School of Creative and Performing Arts. This morning's artistic presentation is titled A Voice, a commissioned work written by Kayleen Sinette Jennings. The program will invite you to celebrate diverse voices, remember the history that led us here, and continue the journey.
I know where I have been. Each valley and each hill, each challenge to my faith, each test and trial of will. I know when I'm afraid. I know when I can't cope. I know when I have cried. I know when I've lost hope.
I know when I've been scarred, when I've been bruised and rattled. I know how much I've bled and nursed my wounds from battle.
I know I've lost my strength, when I've mourned and I have cried for all those who've been lost, those who've suffered and have died.
I've seen the bleakest nights. I've heard the very worst. Unanswered are my prayers. I've ranted, railed, and cursed.
But then there comes a voice in the darkness from the deep. A voice says, don't despair. A voice says, don't you weep.
A voice says, no more worry. It says, get off your knees. A voice says, come, stand up now. It says, walk with me, please.
Like bird song, yet like thunder. A voice that moves me so. A voice so unfamiliar. Yet a voice I surely know.
Yet a voice I surely know. Yet a voice I surely know.
Yet a voice I surely know.
It says, now you shall rise up from misery and pain. It says, indeed, you'll rise and walk in strength and pride again.
A voice speaks of a dream. It tells me of a place where love shall grow and nurture every age, creed, class, and race.
A voice says no more hatred, no struggle, and no strife. A voice speaks of uniting all human beings for life.
It says, where we've been broken, we now shall be made whole. This voice is like a balm to me.
It soothes my very soul.
A voice.
A voice.
So firm, yet tender. So loud, yet sweet, sublime. A voice that comes from nowhere, yet I proudly claim it mine. I know where I have been.
I know where I have been.
I know where I know where I have been.
I know where I have been.
I know where I have been.
And I know where I am going. I'm certain in this peace. I'm comforted in knowing. I say to you who listen, I say to you who hear, our mission is revealed to us. Our pathway is quite clear.
All colors, all religions,
all we in strife and strain.
LGBTQ, veterans,
the elders, those in pain,
the immigrants and homeless,
all who have been cast aside.
We see you and reach out to you. Arms full, hearts full, arms open wide. We have a voice to guide us, and with our voice we sing in resounding praise of a resounding voice of Martin Luther King. He knew where he had been. He'd seen our grief and sorrow. He gave his life to us, knowing he'd not see tomorrow.
And so,
we bring his voice among us here today to lift our hearts and spirits, to rouse us and to say,
I'm going to ask each of you to join me now. When I call, you respond. Repeat after me. I know where I have been.
I know where I have been.
I know where I shall tread.
I know where I shall tread.
I walk with humankind.
I walk with humankind.
Towards brighter days ahead.
Towards brighter days ahead.
I know where I have been.
I know where I have been.
I've lived in hate and fear.
I've lived in hate and fear.
But all that's in the past.
But all that's in the past.
My righteous way is clear.
My righteous way is clear.
If you are able at this time, please stand up. And as you stand, reach out a hand to someone who's unable to stand with you. Go ahead, seek them out, turn to them and smile. It's okay. Offer your hand for just a little while. In this attitude of grace and love, repeat after me once more. This ground on which I stand.
This ground on which I stand.
This moment here in time.
This moment here in time.
This place of peace and love.
This place of peace and love.
I claim and own as mine.
I claim and own as mine.
Wherever we shall walk.
Wherever we shall walk.
In sun or stormy weather.
In sun or stormy weather.
We shall walk hand in hand.
We shall walk hand in hand.
We live, love, walk together.
We live, love, walk together.
Wasn't that beautiful? Give yourselves a round of applause. And I ask you to continue the love for our performers from the Stevens College School of Creative and Performing Arts. Specifically, we would like to give love to Chloe, Haley, Natalie, Daisy, Destiny, and Zoe. And behind you, you have projection design. Those were created by a Stevens student, Mariah Lindsay, and all stage management was by a student, Lexi Holder. Give them a round of applause. And I know you want to, so go ahead and give yourselves a round of applause. Go ahead, you may take your seats. Our author, Colleen Sinnette Jennings, wants to leave you with a thought that is not in rhyme. When she wrote these words and they asked you to participate just now, you probably said to yourself, oh dang, now I have to repeat after her. And then you probably said, Oh, dang. Now she wants me to stand up and take somebody's hand. But the cool part is you did it. And I think it actually made you feel good, maybe a little uncomfortable. Because sometimes we are reluctant to take the time and to expend the energy. Sometimes we feel put out when we're asked to walk a few steps or reach out to someone. We are definitely scared to make contact with strangers, or should I say those we perceive or imagine to be strangers. Today, we have honored and will continue to honor Dr. King. But even more importantly, we honor his voice in us. Dr. King marched, went to jail, published writings, endured beatings, and ultimately gave his life so that we could be in a space like this together. So the next time it seems a little inconvenient for you to speak to or speak up for or reach out to a so-called stranger, we hope this words and this performance, and especially Dr. King's voice, will speak in you. You've experienced an original poem by Colleen Sinnette Jennings, complemented by movement and theatrical sign titled A Voice.
Light in the darkness, though the night is black as my skin. There's a light burning bright, showing me the way. But I know where I've been. There's a cry in the distance. It's a voice that comes from deep within. There's a cry asking why, a pretty answers up ahead. 'Cause I know where I've been. There's a road we've been traveling, lost so many on the way. The riches will be plenty, worth the price we had to pay. There's a dream in the future. There's a struggle that we have yet to win. And there's pride in my heart, 'cause I know where I'm going. Yes, I do. And I know where I've been. There's a road we must travel. We must travel. There's a promise. There is a promise that we must make. And the riches. Oh, but the riches will be plenty. Yeah. And the risk. Worth the risk. And the chances we take. There's a dream in the future. There's a struggle that we have yet to win. Use that pride in our hearts to lift us up until tomorrow. 'Cause just to sit still would be our sin. I know where I'm going. Lord knows I know where I've been.
We would like to thank all of the performers. Let's give them a hand. This concludes the 2020 Columbia Values Diversity Celebration. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we look forward to seeing you next year.